Hello, Mike. Mike, you want to pray?
Yeah, I'll say a prayer. Wait, let me turn my video back on. Sorry, my internet's a bit average, so I'm cutting video.
Hello.
But yeah, just
Yeah, man. Lekker. Say a prayer for us.
Yeah, Jesus, we welcome you here tonight, and just thank you for your goodness and for your glory. But we just pray that you would, just bring your Spirit to us and help us to learn to all be disciples and students of you, to imitate you better. And just bless this time together, and bless what Helmut says, that we may, just hear your words in it and learn to follow your steps. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike, and welcome. We haven't spoken in a while. Guys, I want to say sorry. I put an open invitation last time for whatever topics you feel we should discuss. And actually, as the week progressed, I had a lot of ongemak, what do you call it? Unease with discussing topics. I think this is a familiar trap, because once you start discussing topics, I mean, we easily slide back into a Greek way of approaching the Bible, categorizing the word into relevant sections or relevant topics. There is a place for that, but what I do think, what is special about this gathering is that we can head straight to the scriptures and try to read and discover what the Bible says in its original language. Otherwise, all of us are part of other fellowships and other groups and other online whatever, and and whatever. Hello, this is Inka.
Hi.
This is Inka. Okay, we're just trying to beat Ziggy and Imogen and Chantal, so we're going to invite more people in. So first of all, apologies that I put out that, because I really feel that what God has called me to do is help open the scriptures. So I've prayed, and I could not get rid of the idea of speaking about Exodus 33 and 34. Did anybody get around to reading it by any chance? Anybody? Hello, Stefan. Welcome. Okay, this is not a problem. I'm going to read for us a short piece from Exodus 33 verse 11 up to about 34 verse 7. The context is the Israelites have made it to Mount Sinai. Okay, in the Bible it's called Har Horeb or Mount Horeb. It's very often synonym with Mount Sinai. And as you know, Moses has gone up to the mountain, and God has ordered him to write the Bible, we call it the 10 Commandments, but actually the Bible call it the 10 words or the 10 matters. The word for word in Hebrew, davar, is the same as the word for matter. So an important matter in Hebrew is the same Hebrew word for the Hebrew word word, right? I know it's confusing. So davar literally means an important matter. So the idea of 10 commandments does not exist in the Bible. So sorry if that shakes anybody's understanding of matters. Excuse the pun. This is post that, you remember, Moses returned back, and he found what? He found the Israelites dancing and celebrating around a golden calf, and we throw our toys out of the cot and we go off. How could they build a golden calf? And then we forget that there are people who lived in Mitzrayim or Egypt for 430 years, and their understanding of God was a calf. All right, an aleph. An aleph is a strong animal known for its capacity to be long-suffering, to be diligent, to keep on working when everybody goes to bed. So their understanding of God as Elohim was a calf. So just before we throw stones at the poor Israelites, they did make their only, their little thing, which was their only understanding of God. Okay, fast forward. Moses gets upset. How could the Israelites be dancing around an inanimate thing like a golden calf? And he's all emo. And then this whole chapter 33, where Yahweh calls Moses back onto the mountain. He, read the context. I'm just going to go through the whole context, but Moses set up his own tent outside of the Israelite camp, and that became the tent of appointment, where the glory or the cloud of God rested on the entrance, and that whole story. And then there is a dialogue between Yahweh and Moses. And this is where we start in Exodus 33, verse 11. Okay. Now, before we start reading, I want to actually cover some Hebrew words as we read without breaking the momentum too much. So we want to focus on actually a single verse in chapter 34 tonight, which I will get round to when we get there. What is it, what we're going to talk about? Let's start with Exodus 33, verse 11. Thus Yahweh spoke to Moshe, that's the Hebrew word for Moses, face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Stop. Thus Yahweh spoke to Moshe face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Now, if you do not understand Hebrew, the word friend conjures a different word to the Hebrew word that's actually being used here. Curiously, the word in Hebrew for friend is a chaver. Okay, we speak of a group of friends as chaverim. You speak of a group of female friends as chaverot. But the word chaver is the actual Hebrew word that means a friend. Curiously, the translators use the word friend here, but the word that is actually beneath it, I'm just going to quickly share it with you. It's the word reya. All right, this is important because reya is a noun derivative of the word shepherd. So, and the word shepherd, which is the word ra'ah, comes from the word ra'eh, which means to see. So God speaks to Moses as a friend is better translated in Hebrew. God speaks to him as an associate who sees. But you miss that when you use friend, right? Because if it would use the word chaver, it would just mean he's like some other close companion. But the word chosen here is he's a riyah, means God sees him as an associate in how God views the whole story that's unfolding. Very important. Okay, I'm not going to interrupt all the verses. Sorry about that. And he would return to the camp, but his servant Joshua, son of Nun, a young man, did not leave the tent. It's speaking about the tent of appointment that Moses has set up outside of the camp. Verse 12, and you saying to me, bring up this people, but you have not made known to me whom you would send with me. Though you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my eyes. I will come back to this word favor now. Verse 13, very important verse. Moses tells God, and now, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, please show me your way. Okay? Follow closely and let me know you so that I find favor in your eyes. There's a lot of things that is very problematic in this verse, but I'm going to start with the most obvious one here, the idea of favor. Okay? Favor, call it grace, call it mercy, whatever, but favor is an interesting choice of words by the translators because it almost doesn't make sense if you read what it says in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it says, I have found, let me read it for you, and I can actually share my iPad. I've learned how to do that. Let's just see if I can still do it again. Just a second. Ek wil net gou iets kyk. Just a second, please. Oh, it's not working. Sorry, it's not showing up. I just wanted to show you the passage where it actually uses the word. But the very important Hebrew word that is being used there and as the word translated to favor is the word chen in Hebrew. Okay, a chen in Hebrew consists of two Hebrew letters. It's a chet, and in the ancient Hebrew with the pictures, it is a picture of a wall, and the nun is a picture of seed, like seed that's being, sown into the field, whatever. So if you put those two together, it's a wall that continues. So the word behind favor, the actual Hebrew word, is the word that means a continuous wall. And those of you who have been journeying with the Hebrew perspectives classes for a while will know that is actually the biblical understanding of grace. It means that God places a wall around his congregation, around his family. That comes from the nomadic understanding how they pitched a camp. They pitched the tents in a circle, and in the middle, in between the tents, you had almost the social life, and you had the place where the community did life together, where the children played, where people would sit and hang out together, and then the different families would each have their own tents. But the outer peripheral wall of that nomadic camp was known as Chen. Now, let's read it again with this in mind. And now, please, if I have found favor, if I have found Chen in your eyes, can you hear what Moses tells him? If I have found a place within your household, completely different meaning. Because favor, the problem with a philosophical term like favor is, unless we define what we mean by favor, is you will run with your definition of favor and build theology and build dogma on that, and you will probably not come to terms with what God is really saying. God is really saying is, this is about my household and about how I imagine we do life together. And now Moses says, if I found favor in your eyes, if I find an encampment in your eyes, if I find safety of your household in your eyes, please show me your way. Does that make sense? This is changing everything about how we read, because if you read it only as favor, it's a very fluffy, very abstract. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, the way we speak in the modern church about favor and grace, I mean, we mean a lot of beautiful things with it, but we're very often not in touch with a concrete meaning of God is really speaking about a tented camp here. He's speaking about and the ancient Hebrews understood the nomadic camp and the safety of that as this is where you're sheltered from wild animals. This is where you're sheltered from the pirates. This is where you're sheltered from bad weather. This is where families live together. This is where there is a code of conduct, a social conduct that works for everyone. So when God speaks about favor, he literally means, I'm talking about my household here. Okay, very important. We're going to get round to this, but just take note of it. So Moses is asking God, if I have found an encampment in you, who is that? Somebody needs to mute Essia. Hallo Essia.
Jy sleutel uitgehaal, Ella?
Die mat ingesit. Die mat.
Okay, we're gonna go there. Essia ons hoor jou. Okay. Diggy, you're the boss. You need to mute everyone. Can't you? Can you not? Anyway, I'm going to continue. Okay.
Letterlik, Essie wil nie gemute word nie. Ek mute hom. Nou sy stil.
There we go. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm just going to read it again. Keep in mind, tented camp, outer wall, like a periphery of protection. And now, please, if I, Moses, have found protection in your eyes, family in your eyes, household, an outer wall of protection in your eyes, please show me your way and let me know you. By the way, I'm not going to go into that now, but the word that he uses there for let me know is what they call in Hebrew the causative form of the verb to know. And in Hebrew, if you say you know somebody, it means you have intimate knowledge of being with them. It almost means intimate experiential knowledge. We see that most vividly in Genesis 4 was one where it says, Adam knew Eve and Cain was born. Okay, so it means absolute vulnerability, absolute transparency. So please show me your way and let me know you. Can you see what's going on? He's speaking about God's household. He's speaking about that God would show him the way that Yahweh actually works. And then he says, and let me experience you intimately. This is quite different from reading it as, please show me your way and let me know you so I can find favor in your eyes. Does that make sense? Anyway, very important. And consider that this, we're still in verse 13, this nation is your people. He speaks about his own. Remember, Moses, what's going on in the story, Moses is very concerned that God has told him, look, I will send you forward, but I'm not gonna go with you. This is like Moses is really upset with God here, and then he starts bargaining with God from here on. Verse 14, and he said, now it's Yahweh speaking, my presence does go, and I shall give you rest. And he said to him, if your presence is not going, do not lead us up from here. For how then shall it be known that I have found favor, again, Chen, in your eyes, I and your people, except if you go with us. then we shall be distinguished, I and your people, from all the people who are upon the face of the earth. Verse 17, and Yahweh said to Moshe, even this word you have spoken, I shall do. This is amazing. For you have found favor in my eyes, and I know you by name. Then he said, please show me your esteem. Okay, no, this is Moses. Now Moses gets real. Moses says, I've been up the mountain once. I came down. You told me all sorts of things to write down. And then Israel, the camp wasn't all in that order. And now he says, please show me your esteem. The word for esteem in Hebrew, I'm just going to double check if I'm right. Verse 18. Ding, ding, ding. Just a sec. Oh yeah, normally gets translated as glory. Show me your glory. Nice word that we use in all of our worship songs. But the word glory is the word kavod. Kavod in Hebrew means your weight. So basically, Moses says, please show me your weight, not mean your weight. In Hebrew, the understanding was the way that money was weighed out was an indication of its value. All right. So Moses is asking Yahweh, show me your value. Show me what you're made of. Okay. This is very important. Verse 19, and Yahweh said, I shall cause all my goodness to pass before you, and I, Yahweh, shall proclaim the name of Yahweh before you. Just quickly on the word goodness, verse 19, it's the word tuvi, comes from the Hebrew word tov, which is the word that we've discussed when we spoke about man and woman. It's got to do with, if you say something is good, for example, it was evening, it was morning, it was day one, and it was good, means it worked. It has purpose, it has function. What God intended it to be it's doing that. All right. So now God is telling Moses, I shall cause all my goodness to pass before you. Okay. All of that in me, which is working, all of that, which is functional, all of that, which is intentional, all of that, which operates with purpose. I'm going to cause that to pass in front of you. And I shall proclaim the name of Yahweh. You'll see why this is important just now. And I shall favor him whom I favor. There again, I shall put him in my household, whom I put in my household. And I shall have compassion on him. And him to see for no man sees me and live. Important. Okay. And Yahweh said, see, there is a place with me, and you shall stand on the rock. And it shall be while my esteem, my glory, my kavod passes by, that I shall put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand while I pass by. Now hear this, verse 23, and this is the last verse of chapter 33. Then I shall take away my hand, and you shall see my back. Have you ever thought of what's going on there? Why does God tell Moses, I will pass by you, and I will cause you to see not my face, but my back? What does it mean? In Hebrew, the Hebrew word for back is achar, and that my back is acharai. It means my backside, but in Hebraic understanding, your backside is also the future. In Hebrew, what you see with your face, what is in front of you, is the past. That's why God was continuously telling the Israelites, remember this, remember this, remember how I rescued you, remember this, do this, do that. Everything was about what their eyes witnesses, because that is the story that they're telling, okay? Now, but right here, the exception, he says, now I will show you my rear side, I will show you my back. And what God is really telling him, Moses, I am going to show you what happens after this. I'm going to show you for a second what happens in the future. Because for ancient Hebrew, the future was behind them. They literally walked into the future backside first. And their understanding was the only thing we need to know about what's behind us, the future, is about what God did. This is, we retell the stories, we reconnect the dots. It's almost like in England when they row on the Thames. What do you call, Chrissy, what do you call those rows on the Thames, you know? They keep their eyes on a beacon down the river. Is there a word for that?
The cocks.
The cocks, yeah. The ones.
Yeah, the cocks.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant idea. How do they know what's going on behind them? They don't. They trust. They keep their eyes on a sequence of beacons that keep them aligned, so that they go in a straight line, in a right line. This is exactly what's going on here. God tells the Hebrews, you don't know the future, and it's also not important what happens in the future. What is important is that you keep your eyes on the beacons of what I'm doing. In that way, you will know my character, and in that way, you will be able to trust me, because the story has repeated a number of times. So you can say, right, we can walk into the darkness, the so-called the hinter side, the rear side, because we trust, because we can see how the beacons line up. Does it make sense? But here God says, for a moment, I will allow you to see my back. I will allow you to see what happens hereafter. Acharai, what comes after this. It's really fascinating. And we miss that, because the English just tell us, I shall take away my hand and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. Interesting. All the hidden gems. Now, chapter 34. And Yahweh said to Moses, cut 2 tablets of stone, like we do another round 2 of this. Cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and I shall write on these tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. And be ready in the morning. Then you shall come up in the morning to Mount Sinai and present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. No prisoners here, and let no man come up with you, and let no man be seen in all the mountain, and let not even the flock or the herd feed in front of that mountain. And he cut 2 tablets of stone like the first ones. Then Moshe rose up early in the morning and went up Mount Sinai as Yahweh had commanded him. And he took 2 tablets of stone in his hand. Verse 5, and Yahweh came down in the cloud and stood with him there. And Yahweh proclaimed the name Yahweh. Very weird thing. I'll speak about that now. Verse 6 is the verse where we're going to stop tonight and just discuss a number of things which I all believe is very important for the way that we deal with the character of God. And Yahweh passed before him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh, a compassionate God. This translation says an El compassionate, and showing favor, patient, and great in loving commitment and truth. And we're going to unpack what is it. So God says, first of all, Moses is now in the cloud on top of Mount Sinai, alone with God. As we continue, you see that he's been there for 40 days and 40 nights. He's alone with God, and God, first of all, calls out his own name. Okay, this is interesting. I actually want us to deal with the name of God in the next meeting. Okay, because we are 30 minutes into this now, and I need to stop with all the. But very important, and let's get to that next time. But God calls his name twice. By the way, in Hebrew, when you do Hebraic exclamation twice, it means in Hebraic understanding, you reinforce it. Shalom, shalom. It means, hey, a warm welcome to you. Okay. If God calls out Yahweh, Yahweh, however we pronounce that, let's just bear with it. We're not sure how that word is pronounced, but I'm just going to call it Yahweh for the moment. Yahweh, Yahweh, and El compassionate, and showing favor, patient, great in loving commitment and truth. Now let's look what's going on there in the Hebrew. Remember, God calls Moses up again. He's going to give him 2 more stones. We're going to repeat the process because the first round they didn't do that well. And now Moses said, I'll negotiate with you. I'll come up to the mountain, but I need to see your glory. Okay, and God says, okay, yeah, you. If you see my face, you die. I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to put you in a piece of the rock. I'm going to put my hand over you. I'm going to pass by, and when I'm past you, I'm going to take my hand away, and I will allow you to see my rear side, but you won't see my face. And God is basically saying, I'm going to show you what's going to happen, because what is about to happen, you need to understand. Okay, I believe this is what is going on there. God doesn't show him a number of prophetic things or anything. He tells him what will happen hereafter. And what happens after this, God actually tells him 5 things. Well, 4 important points. The last one is split in 2, but 4 things about his character that is very much needed for them to go forward trusting Yahweh. First one, God says to him, I am an El Rachum. El Rachum in Hebrew means I am a God of compassion. The word Rachum, okay, is the noun form of the verb Racham. What does compassion mean for us? Compassion for us, conjures a number of things, very emotional things. Compassion, somebody cares for you, but the actual word racham means to fondle with somebody. It means if you hold a baby and you cuddle them, or if you hold your lover and you cuddle them, whatever, it's very tangible. It's very much, I hold you in my hands and I deal with you like I hold you against me and I play with you, I fondle with you. It's an extremely sensitive term. It doesn't only mean God has an emotional sensitivity towards us and feel with us and has empathy for when things go wrong and when we go through hard times. No, it says, I actually want to fondle you, okay? I am a God who fondles you. Maybe just before we go to the word God, it uses the word El. For those who've been on this, excuse me, I'm just going to quickly unpack the word El. El is the shorthand word for the longer word Elohim, which is translated in our Bibles as God. El, it has got two Hebrew letters, an Aleph, which is the picture for an ox, and a Lamed, which is the picture for a shepherd's staff. When you put those two together, it forms their most basic understanding of what it means to have a God in your life. The Aleph, the ox, represents an aspect of God which the Hebrews very deeply understood. It means, and I mentioned it earlier, it means an animal that keeps on working when all the other animals are tired. It means the animal that will persevere, that won't complain, that is slow but thorough, everything that you can associate with an ox pulling a plow through a field. And the second letter is the shepherd's staff, the Lamed, represents their understanding of authority, or their understanding of somebody that looks after you. Okay, that's the whole idea behind a shepherd, is somebody that looks after you while you sleep. And you recall Jesus' words in John 10, where he explains how the sheep is safely in a little sheep pen, and Yeshua says he waits at the door, like he's the one that stays awake when they fall asleep and when they're vulnerable to the enemy. Okay, so when you put these two together, an ox and a shepherd's staff, it means God is like the ox that leads us. He's like the slow to anger, thorough, diligent being that leads us and that looks after us. That's the understanding of God. So when he uses the word El, it almost formed the base word of everything that follows. El Rachum. So you're the strong shepherd that fondles us. Okay, very important first aspect. The next word says V'chanun. Now, again, our English translations say a God of compassion that shows favor. Again, here we on a runaway train where it's all about the fluffiness of favor, unmerited favor. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not what's written there. God says, I am the El who fondles with you. And secondly, I'm the one who puts a tent around you. I'm the one who invites you into my household. So you're being held, you're safe. The sensation of physical contact with God. God says, I'm all about getting you into my household, where you're safe, where my household forms the boundaries, the outer safe wall for you, right? Second aspect, El Rachum V'chanun. Chanun means encampment. Then it's a very funny thing that God says, that the translator says, I'm slow to anger. This one says, I'm patient. Well, you know what's written in the Hebrew? Erech apayim means I have a long nose. So it says, I'm a God who fondles you, who invites you into my camp, and I have a long nose. But, and you see, and this is when very often when people speaks about Bible translation, which is the best translation, I believe translators do a pretty amazing job when they try to translate very difficult concepts so we can do something with it. Erech in Hebrew means to prolong, and apayim is always in its plural state in Hebrew. It means the nostrils. Okay, so it means prolonged nostrils. Okay, it's very weird, but it's an idiom that means I don't get angry that quickly. All right, and it comes from the understanding in the nomadic world where bigger animals that had bigger noses, when it was more difficult for them to snort, and snorting was like a sign of getting angry. So it's literally the Bible translators get to a point where they say, "Oh, God has a long nose." We can't tell them that. We can't tell them God is a God of compassion, favor. He has a long nose, and then they have to kind of interpret it for us because we'd stop reading Bible, right? But anyway, Erech Apayim, I think what we need to take from that is there's a little bit of humor in it, but there's also a bit of ancient Hebrew nomadicism in it. God is very patient. And he understands that we don't get things right the first time. I mean, pretty much like what's going on in this story. The Israelites didn't get the first round right. And here Moses is back with God, and God says to him, Moses, I'm just going to repeat a number of things that you need to bank about my character. I'm all about fondling you. I'm all about getting you into my household. Don't get angry that quickly. All right. And then the very fascinating next three words, V'rav chesed ve'emet. I'm going to unpack these three words. Just loosely translated, I am great in chesed and in truth. Chesed usually gets translated in the English Bibles as loving kindness. Some translations call it mercy. Some call it grace, love. There's a number of versions of this word. I'm going to stop and we're going to talk about Chesed and we're going to talk about Emet, because I believe of all these things, we need to understand God is giving them some theology here, which is very important. It's not dogma. It's an important understanding of who God is. But before we unpack Chesed and Emet, the clarifier, Rav Chesed, which means great in Chesed and great in truth. Rav is absolutely the adjective that means great. It's also the root word for the word rabbi, Ravi in Hebrew. By the way, have you seen that Ravi Zacharias has passed away? Hectic. Anyway, Ravi, which means rabbi, literally means my great one. So if you call somebody a rabbi, you literally call them my great one. No wonder Jesus said, call no man rabbi, right? For you have only one rabbi, and that is him. Okay. And I think it's super important because we very often like to joke with people, pretty much like I also don't like calling people Domini or, Dominus means you're like a thunderous, dominant character. I don't think the Bible is all about that. There's only one rabbi, and it's Jesus. And I think this is a very important point. Just as we speak about Rav Chesed, it means and great in. Okay, now we're going to look at Chesed. There is a book of which I don't know the title of the cuff that has been written on the subject of Chesed. And I understand the guy through whom I learned about it, his name is Skip Moon. He's done a lot of work and I'm indebted to him for a lot of my understanding of Chesed. But basically, Chesed is the type of how God views commitment and covenant. There's more aspects of God's love. For example, words like achava, which means desire. There's the word dod, which means erotic love in Hebrew. Pretty much like in Greek, you have 5 words for your internet connection is unstable. Oh, okay, I'm better again. So I'm not going to delve into all the types of love on this stage, but here, curiously, God does tell Moses, you need to understand, I'm great in chesed. He doesn't tell him, I'm great in desire and I'm great in erotic love. For this conversation, this is not the focal point. Don't get me wrong. In Deuteronomy 6 verse 4, when God says you need to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, you know that, Deuteronomy 6 verse 5, which is part of the creed of Israel, it does not use the word chesed. There it uses the word ahava. Basically, where there God tells Israel, you need to desire the Lord your God with all your heart. Very interesting. And this is the problem is if we have only one word for love, and we don't know what sits behind it, we miss on the nuances of what the text is trying to say. So here the text is saying, I am great in marital love. So in English, if you want to translate the word chesed, you need at least 5 English words. I'm going to tell them to you, write it down. You need to have loyal, reciprocal, marital, commitment that is transitive. I'm going to explain what I mean by these. Loyal, reciprocal, marital commitment, which is transitive. Those 5 words. If you omit one of them, you miss the core essence of what chesed is about. When God invites Israel into a marital commitment with him, there is a number of things we need to know why the word chesed is a better word than the Greek word agape. I'm not saying agape is not a good word. I'll speak about agape just in a second. But the Greek translation for the word chesed is unfortunately agape, and agape has the understanding that it's unconditional love. There is one problem with the idea of God's love as being unconditional. It means that God's standard may mean that you can drag other gods and other lovers and everybody into bed with him. And God is actually not okay with it. If you're married to God, there is no place for a third one. There is no place for another God. That is why in the light of chesed, God told the Israelites, when you go into the land that I'm giving you, you wipe out everyone, not necessarily because of them, but because of their gods. God is not okay from a chesed point of view to be in bed with Mammon, to be in bed with Dagon and whichever other gods, the Asherah, all of the deities of the land of Canaan. God is not okay with it. And you see that in chesed, where it's all about God is into loyal, reciprocal, marital commitment, where there is only place for him as the other lover. And the reason why I say agape is a dangerous word to use, because it sometimes has the undertone that it's okay. It's okay to have two more gods. You know, Yahweh is important, but so is Mammon. Mammon is not unimportant, right? I kind of use the one God to pay the other God vibes. No, Chesed tells us it's important to know that God is a one God. Okay. So
Ek dink agape, ekskuus tog, ek dink agape verwys ook na righteous love, righteous unconditional love. Nie soos jy dit nou sê, jy weet anything goes nie. Dis nie daai tipe liefde nie. Nie dat dit eintlik liefde is, en anything goes beteken ook nie eintlik liefde nie. As jy mens mooi daarop
seker. Yeah, dankie Andries, and you're absolutely right. Andries just said it means righteous. What's the word? Righteous? What were you saying?
Ek praat onder korreksie, so maar hoe ek dit verstaan is righteous love. Dis 'n righteous love. Dis 'n righteous unconditional love. Dis nie net soos ja nee, ek kan vaar jou soos jy is, tipe jy weet anything goes nie. Dis maar
okay. I don't know a lot about agape. I know one thing about agape which I think is amazing. I'm just going to mention it here because God is not using the word agape, he's using the word chesed. But what is amazing about the word agape, Andres, just to confirm what you're saying, is eros, which is one of the Greek words for love, means the best for me. And that's very often when the Bible warns against erotic interaction, that it's very often driven by what is in this for me. Okay, but agape means the best for the other person. That I agree with agape, and I think translating chesed into agape from that point of view is a brilliant word. I don't like the undertone that they say it's unconditional, not because I think there's a absolutely. I mean, there is no hope for us. But I don't like the idea that we convey the notion that God is okay if you don't change, if you don't turn away. No, God is not okay with it. He actually invites us into a life of holiness. So that's all I'm trying to communicate. I'm not saying agape is not a good word. I'm just saying very often our English or our Greek understanding of the word agape leaves a bit of a question mark. Does it make sense? And but I agree with you. Agape has an amazing. Okay, but you're going into loyal, reciprocal marital commitment. In other words, I come to the party 100%. And you know what, Moses? I empower you and every other person who's in this marital commitment. I empower you with the ability to reciprocate that. It's not only that God says, okay, I come to the party now, let's see how you perform. Chesed literally means that God understands that what he's giving us also empowers us to return it to him. And then the fifth idea behind chesed is it's transitive. It means you cannot keep chesed for yourself and think you have a grip on it unless you pass chesed on. Unless you do that, you don't have an understanding of chesed. This is crucial to how chesed, the design of chesed is. You may remember that after Jonathan and Saul died, David kind of raised the kingdom up and he was starting to have success on all areas. And then you remember that in I think it's in 2 Samuel, if I quickly look at it.
5 and 6, I think, or 8 and 9, where he takes.
Yeah. 2 Samuel 8, you're absolutely right. Yeah. It's chapter 9, actually. Verse 1, it says, and David said, is there still anyone who is left of the house of Shaul that I might show him chesed? Listen to this, because of Jonathan. Okay, so if you understand chesed, David here is compelled by the concept of chesed. He says, my undying love, look, that is a very difficult passage. The way that David and Jonathan's love worked is really an interesting situation. It's like he said Jonathan's love was more important than the love of women. And a lot of skeptics, there's a lot of questions about that. But what we do know is he was in covenant with Jonathan. And here in chapter 9, he says, because of my loyal reciprocal commitment to Jonathan, I need to pass this on. And then, Mephibosheth, the lame son of Jonathan, then gets invited to David's household. And then David looks after the lame child because of chesed. Okay, if it was just about how David felt and his desires and whatever, that would not have happened. But because of the intrinsic design of chesed, David had to pass on this commitment. And then he invites a lame child and starts looking after a lame child. That's a pretty big commitment, but it's chesed. So God here for Moses says, Moses, you got to understand, I'm big into chesed. Let's just make chesed practical in terms of transitive. If looking at it from a Christian point of view, if we are confronted with the love of Yeshua and we do not tell others, if we do not live that out, we don't understand chesed. We don't need to warn each other and encourage each other just to go share the gospel. We just need to understand chesed. Because if we really have an encounter with chesed, we will share that. We will understand that once we keep it, it's not chesed anymore. But it's only chesed when I discover this deep, loyal, marital love for God, I have to give it away. I have to pass it on. All right, very important. And then the last one for the evening, we have 10 more minutes left. By the way, chesed and emet, these two concepts, grace love, loving commitment, marital love, and truth always goes together. You'll see so many of the Psalms, it speaks of chesed ve'emet. I'm not going to go into why I think God says these together, but it seems to be almost two pillars of an understanding of the character of God. The word emet, which is the word for truth, I love the word because from a semantic point of view, you can break up the word emet into two words and a single word. You have the aleph and the mem and the taf. By the way, aleph, mem, taf, which is the word for truth, has the first letter, the middle letter, and the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Interesting. But the word em, which is the first part of emet, is the word mother in Hebrew. And the word mother is literally an ox and water, and that was understood as the strong water. Strong water in Hebrew is the glue. So the word for mother is also the same word for glue. That's why a mother is seen as the glue of the household, where the father is seen as the strength or the tent pole of the household. He keeps the household up while the mother glues the family together. Okay, but now what happens here, the word em literally means strong water or glue, and then you have the letter taf, which is the Hebrew letter for the covenant. See what's going on there. Of the covenant. And if you understand that, then a number of things where the word truth occurs in the scriptures. I'm going to mention one example, which I think is really important. God is always pointing out that there is a covenant and there is an agent that binds us to the covenant. Now you will recall when Pontius Pilate speaks to Yeshua at the end, Pontius Pilate tells him, he says, so you're being accused as the king of Jews. And then what does Jesus answer him? He says to him, what you say is the truth. Okay, and then we know Pilate doesn't catch it, so we ask him what is the truth, and then he wants to go off on a little final Greek debate, and then he asks Jesus what's the truth, and then Jesus just keeps quiet because categorically that's the incorrect question to ask on that point. But what Jesus did tell Pontius Pilate is the fact that you say I'm the king of the Jews is the glue of the covenant. Your homework is to go think about that. Jesus literally points them out that Pontius Pilate, you don't even know what you're saying, but you just by saying that I'm the king of the Jews, I am the glue of the covenant. And you might recall earlier in John 14, verse 6, Jesus makes the profound statement where he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. I am the glue of the covenant. I am the way, I'm the glue of the covenant, and I'm life. Maybe we should one day talk about those three things. It's also very much Hebraic understandings. But let's just recap. El Rachum v'chanun, erech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet. I am a God that fondles with you and is all about encampment. V'chanun. Erech apayim, I am slow to anger. I'm very patient. I'm great in marital commitment that is loyal and transitive. And I'm the truth. And I am the glue of the covenant. And this is what he is told Moses at the end of chapter 33, I'm going to show you the future. And so in a sense, I want to say our homework is to go sit with this passage. If you want to, I can type this out on WhatsApp so that I can share this with the groups. But I mean, I think I just want to challenge, and again, I've spoken enough now, but these things, God is into holding us. He's into a household. He's into not getting angry with us when we don't get it right, because we don't get it right that easily. Okay, and then he's all about marital commitment, so that we understand God does not walk away, and he expects and empowers us to do the same. And then he is all about the truth. I believe what he was pointing with that last, for Rav Chesed and Ve'emet, he's preparing us to meet Yeshua. And as you know, later on in the scripture, Moses is becoming aware of the fact that he's not the last say. In Deuteronomy 18, he says, there's another guy coming. I'm not the last say. Although the modern Jews celebrate Moses as, the father and the spindle of the faith. Moses himself said, there's another man coming, and you better listen to him, because his words is the words of God. Very often we miss that in Deuteronomy 18. Anyway, this is what I have to say. I think this is important, because when we deal with Yahweh, and we'll talk about Yahweh next time, what does the name Yahweh means? And we'll dig into why this is so fundamental. When Moses is sent to the Israelites the first time in Exodus 3, you'll recall God tells him one thing. He tells him, I am that I am. That's the English. In Hebrew, it says, I exist because I exist. But what sits behind exist is, he tells him, I have breath because I have breath. And this is super important, because in Hebraic understanding, the gods of Egypt was all inanimate and dead things. They did not have life in them. They were statues and they were all sorts of things. But the only thing that God wanted Moses to know is, I need you to know, Moses, if you go to the children of Israel, they need to know one thing to start off, is that I have breath in me. I have life in me. And from there on, we'll start coaching them. And pretty much like what's happening, God is now starting to unpack his character so that they know who they deal with. This is what I have. You're dead quiet. Even Elis is still. It's the face of God. Face of God. I actually, Constant asked, what is the face of God, and why can a human not see the face of God, right? And why does God say, there's only one thing that you can see? You can see my back. I don't actually know. Is there anybody that knows that? I actually don't. The word never in its singular form. Interesting. For those who understand Hebrew, may have heard that some words in Hebrew, or actually all words have singular and plural forms, but the word face always occurs in its plural form. Even when it speaks of the face of the earth, it speaks of it in its plural form, which is also really interesting. But Kona, that's a really good question. I will do my homework on that. Why is the faces of God not to be seen? I don't know. It's a very good question. Chantal?
Do you think it could just be a practical thing of like God wanting us to make images out of him and idols like the local people would have had back then?
That's very much very good take on it.
He also wanted to blow his face off.
Yeah, that sounds like a very plausible argument. Christine, do you want to say something?
No, just discussing that this is what they've done with Jesus as well, although he tried to prevent that, and when Jesus came, they put him on. Yeah. It proves the point, actually. Yeah,
very much so.
Even Stefan was saying.
Yeah, like the way that I just don't want to go into the 10 commandments now, but the first commandment, no, which one is the third one that says you will not use the name of God in vain? That also doesn't mean what it says. That I'm thinking of making images of God, but it says you shall not worship a false image of me, right? You shall not worship a version of me that isn't truth. By the way, what's going on in the first 3 commandments of the 10 matters is all about representing God correctly. That's why it says you shall not use the name of God in vain. Literally in Hebrew says you shall not represent me in a way that isn't me. So it's not about calling out a word that is a swear word, that we've made a swear word. It says do not misrepresent me. God is all about when we live and we're out in public, we look like him or we don't. and that's more what it's about. Chantal.
Dis eintlik Jonathan wat wil vra.
Ja. Ek wil net jou gehoor het jy het gepraat oor favor. Sorry, dat ek nie inkom.
Just Jonathan, can
when you spoke about favor, you said in the Old Testament that it's like a wall surrounding you, which is pretty cool. My question is when he speaks about favor in the New Testament. So was it Luke 2 verse something where the Bible says, and Jesus grew in favor with people and with God. Is that a similar word or meaning, that word favor, or no. Is it a different favor?
That is the word charis, and it literally means favor. And I've no problem with the word favor. I just have a problem when we translate the word chen to favor, that we miss out on this concrete. But you're absolutely right. The word favor occurs in the New Testament. I just don't think, like multiple times, I just don't think that favor and the way that the Old Testament gets chen translated to favor is the same concept. So now we sit with a New Testament concept for an Old Testament, very important concept, and we miss it completely. This is more the point that I want to drive home. But you're absolutely right. There is something like favor in the New Testament. My question that I still don't know to this day, and I could not speak to anybody that could answer me, is when the Bible is charis a complete separate idea, or is charis actually related to the idea of God wanting us to know that he is an outer protective wall? I don't know. I could find nobody that could really say if that was the idea that those words had to be translated, or connected.
Would you say, sorry, a follow-on question. Would you say that if I say that I'm favored by God as a person today, would you say that that is both, if I say I'm favored, can that mean both that I'm surrounded by him as well as the other version of in the New Testament? Like Jesus had favor with men and God. Can it be both?
I believe you.
Not getting technical. Can I mean both if I say it? That's what I'm asking.
Absolutely. If you say, remember Moses here asks God in Exodus 34, he says, if I have found favor in your eyes. Now, the only thing I want to point out is both of these are true. I think we've got to understand that what he talks about there is not that God, we think it means that God has made him special. But actually right there, it doesn't refer to it at all. He says, if I have found safety in you, if I Moses, have found that you've invited me into a house, will you show me your way? Do you understand what I mean? So in a sense, it's two concepts and both of them are true. And if I say I have favor with God, okay, it's a very difficult thing because remember the New Testament actually explicitly tells us that God does not have favorites. So if I say I have a favor, doesn't mean I'm a favorite. All of us are favorites. God, we are favored because of Yeshua, because of Jesus. In that sense, we're not better than anybody. We're not also elevated. My gift or my, nothing is more important than the person next to me. It means that I have found God's essence in Christ. But just to point back to your question, if you say I'm favored, it depends on what you're thinking, really. If you're meaning this, it means that I'm favored. It means I'm in God's household, and I pass. By the way, I think that's the more important of the two, because this is where this is where safety and this is where God's kingdom starts. It's not that I have one or other fluffy merit. It's the fact that I'm in God's house.
Yeah, I'm asking because I'm finding that favor is a relevant thing for us nowadays, because favor gives you influence. And if we're going to influence the world for the kingdom, favor.
What favor are you talking about? Because if you're talking about
the New Testament favor, so like Jesus grew in. So I know the Old Testament one that you explained, and it's phenomenal. It's really, what I'm thinking, or what I'm asking, or what I'm processing. So God is a respecter of principles, not a respecter of people. So He doesn't have favorites, to what you say. I think what I'm asking is, if I how important is the favor of the New Testament, if I can use those words, today for us as believers, in order for us to have influence in society, influence in business, influence in kingdom? But I think it's very important because favor creates space for you in the same way that Jesus had favor with man. I think we need a similar kind of favor in order for us to influence.
Okay, so I am outspokenly less versed in the Greek understanding of favor. I would say if I would make a mistake, I'd rather make a mistake to say I have favor because I'm in God's household and I'm protected. In other, for my mind, and I've been coming with the Hebrew language for so long that is more the meaning for me. Yes, I fully recognize that there is another. By the way, I'm with the word favor in Luke 2:52 is the word chariti. It comes from the word charis. Graciousness as gratifying, a manner of act, abstract or concrete, literal, especially with the divine influence upon the heart and its reflection in the life, including gratitude, acceptable benefit, favor, gift, grace. Yeah, the thing about Strong's concordance is it's a bit like the Amplified Bible. It gives you so many options. You basically pick the one that you like. But anyway, so it's a very difficult thing. But grace, the way I think very often the modern church uses it, is more the charis thing, and it is so undefined that most people just run with it. That's why I have a personal struggle sometimes with this hyper grace vibe, is we don't actually stop to give it sensible, concrete definition that we all agree upon. It's got such an ethereal vibe to it that it almost becomes ephemeral. Then it becomes a vapor again. Whereas I think if we could start by defining the concept of favor as God's household, I think that's where we should start. And then moving into the more abstract of the unmerited favor of God, I am I'm very cautious. What do you know? Did you miss over there? Yeah.
I missed all of that. Can I send you a WhatsApp to ask for your answer, not to keep everyone back? I would really love to. Sure. Conclusion.
Yeah.
I don't have any answers. I am just curious about the Hebrew scriptures. I'm just saying, and just to your point, I think you are absolutely right. Favor means two things. The English word favor has two different languages that has different meanings in their roots. I'm almost more worried that the translators use the word favor when it comes to chen. That's more troubling to me, actually. I actually have no problem with the fact that we have favor with God, that Yeshua had favor with God and men. It's fantastic. I mean, I also feel like I have favor with God. Does it make sense? I won't go cry that from the mountains, but I feel that I have God's favor because that's a part of his character that I trust. But anyway, all I want to say is God gives us some foundational building blocks in the Old Testament that helps us understand who we are dealing with. And those things is what tonight was about. God is telling us, you got to understand these things about me before you move on. Because God is teaching, remember, God is teaching the Israelites who he is. Moses doesn't even know who God is. We forget that. We think Moses is this man of God, and the Bible calls him a friend of God. But interesting, the Bible doesn't use the word friend in the way that we see it. God sees him as an associate for coaching and teaching his nation about his character and about how he actually works with people. So anyway, that's the only point I want to drive about favor. Yeah.
I think Andres also had a question.
Hello, Andres.
Me?
Oh.
He unmuted. I saw that.
Oh. Okay, no worries.
The conductor.
Stefan, yes.
So just to this debate about what does favor really mean in the different languages. To be honest, I don't know if I completely get the difference, I suppose. Like, could they be meaning the same thing? And I'm wondering that because I'm wondering how the translators got there. To be part of someone's household, was that like the largest sign of favor that someone could give in those days? In the way that we would understand it.
From a nomadic point of view, we tend to forget that the Bible, up to the point where it was written in Greek, was written by people who had a certain view on life. We forget that because, remember, nothing in our world is like that. But we must remember that you don't even read about the word month in the Old Testament. It always speaks about the new moon. It assumes a nomadic worldview of Hebrew travelers. There's some concepts in the Bible which is always, if you dig back, there some more than other, but I'm just thinking this is a very good Hebrew word. Is the word month occurs nowhere in the Old Testament. It speaks about it hundreds of times, but it always speaks of a month as a chodesh, as a new moon. So it literally uses a worldview, and that's why I'm saying this. It's important if you look at concepts like favor, where the root word is literally means a continuous wall. It's as if the Bible never deviates from that. It never becomes philosophical or fluffy in the Old Testament. It's only, I'm not saying the New Testament is fluffy. I'm saying the Greek language is a language which is less concrete. It opens up a number of more interpretations. So could it mean the same thing? Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think all of us are philosophical and abstract minded enough that we say it is in any case a journey. We're discovering what this means. It's not, I personally, when I pray and when I journal, and I use the word favor pretty much like the New Testament uses it. But when I read the Old Testament, I know that kind of ethereal concept doesn't exist there. You do get some words in Hebrew, which is a little bit more Hebraically, Hebrew philosophy. But I can tell you the word chen, which is translated as favor, is one thing. It means a wall that continues. And there, you're confronted with a nomadic worldview. This makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. I suppose what I'm wondering is
that we're exposed to the element. Say again.
Yeah. How the translators would have got there. So would that be the best way to, like you said, it doesn't mean that someone is abstractly special or something like that. But if someone were to include them in the encampment, is that to show them that they are special and favored in the way that we would understand it?
that again is, now we're in the domain of Greek philosophy. Does it mean that? I don't know what it means. I think what God wanted to communicate is something that they understood. The highest value for the ancient nomads was family. Their wealth was their animals and their family, and the way that was protected was through a nomadic camp. And was that, like, when you travel through the desert and you're looking for water and food for the other part of your wealth, it's all about staying alive. And that encapsulated a concept for them, which means survival in its most basic form. And here Yahweh comes and tells them, I'm all about that. And for the ancient Hebrews was like, wow, we understand this. We understand what it means. We understand the need to be preserved, in the face of everything that could probably take your life or possibly take your life. So that's the only thing I'm saying. Does it make sense? I don't want to say it means something more philosophical, because it could mean that. But I do think we should use the concrete understanding so that we see what God is on about. Does he also mean more than that? I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. But I think the problem is that, to your question, why does the translators use words? Okay, there's two possible answers to that. The one is the original scriptures were first translated in Greek. I don't know if you know that. Even the Old Testament was translated in Greek, called the LXX, the Septuagint. In fact, no, not also. The Old Testament was translated into Greek. This is, by the way, how they find a number of words. When you actually find the Greek New Testament and you see which words they've chosen for the Greek translation of the Hebrew words, you can very often do the other way around. Try to understand what's the Hebraic, the Hebraic roots in the New Testament. So it serves two purposes. So that's the one thing I think. And then also I just think that Bible translation is something that it did not happen within the Hebrew world. It happened in the Greek world. Do you think the Bible translation, some of the big names like Moody and all these, like, it was in a very modern, already very Latinized Greek, Greco-Roman mindset. So where people were already very abstract. and remember, like, it was nothing. We cannot relate to a nomad living in a tent. You know, for us, when we read a tent, when David says, better is one day in your courts, you know, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts, you know, than 1,000 elsewhere. He's not talking about a temple. He's talking about the tabernacle, which is a tent. It makes sense. So he writes the psalm. He says, better is one day in your tent than 1,000 not in it. But what do we? The image that we conjure is we see a big church building with lights and you know, an auditorium. And yes, better is one day in this auditorium singing worship songs with keyboards and guitars. This is what we see because this is our world. But what David sees is he sees a tabernacle that was carried through the desert. Remember, David didn't build the temple. He had too much bloodshed. Solomon built it. So when David wrote the psalm, there wasn't a temple. There was only a tent. Does it make sense? But we forget that. We read and we hear the text pretty much based on what we see, how we see the world. If the New Testament says, don't neglect the gathering of the saints, what do you see? Well, the image that we call it is, don't neglect your cell group, don't neglect the Zoom call. What would a Jew hear? Don't neglect the Sabbath gathering in the synagogue. What do you hear when you're in a traditional church in the platteland in South Africa? You see a little Dutch Reformed church, and that's your image. All I'm saying is we see what we already believe. We hear what we already believe. But the text, is just is neutral to that. And therefore, I believe the beauty of this conversation is that we try to hear what the text says, and then we could start all the other questions. Anyway, okay, sorry, I've said a lot now, but does it make sense? So all of these things are valuable and has their place, but I think drilling down to the bedrock and okay, Andries, you want to say something? No? Oh. Okay. Everybody good?
I had one thing to add, actually, if I may. Sorry, I know I'm kind of hogging, but it's not a question. It was just something to add to the conversation about love. Is that I heard once that a better translation of agape is not unconditional love, but unconditioned love. And those are often confused. So God loves us not because we've met any condition, but there is actually a condition for his love. So we haven't met a condition, but we've received his love. But he does actually have conditions once he's given us that love.
Wow.
Share it and so on.
That's very much chesed. Yeah. Well, thank you.
I just thought that was a better definition for that.
Yeah. Wow.
Sorry, Ahmed, I ask a lot of questions, and I found today's lecture to be, teaching to be very great and relevant.
Good. Go for it. I don't have answers, but go for it.
I wanted to ask, so this is very new to me, so it's amazing. I mean, last week I enjoyed, this week I enjoyed. In the context of today's culture, where, you use an example now of the gathering of the saints, etc., etc. And so, I mean, we know in the New Testament, after the Holy Spirit came and the early church, they start to meet together and do their thing, etc., etc. I mean, we don't have the tabernacle anymore nowadays and stuff. So do you believe that if David were to say, better is one day in your house than 1,000 elsewhere, how do we make that relevant for ourselves today, in today's society? Because obviously the Old Testament points to Jesus and it points to the New Testament, and all this stuff is lovely, but how can I say that then truthfully? Better is one day in your courts. Is it about a secret place in your inner room? Is it about spending time with people? Is it about gathering at a church? Is it about going on a mission, or is it all of the above? How do I?
It is also all of the above, but do you just interesting? Check your question. How interesting is it that this is the exact thing that Yahweh tells Moses? I'm all about getting into my house. And David basically reiterates this. So how we can make it relevant between an ancient Hebraic culture, which we have literally no connection with, and our modern culture, which is all about reading science and ideas into whatever. The fact of the matter is being in the place where God is ruling the household is the place where we need to be. We need to understand that God is all about getting us to that place. That might be expressed culturally in our times as being in a Sunday service, or being in a cell group meeting, or being in a house church, or being whatever, or going to a Messianic congregation. That could be expressions of it, but the heart behind it, God is all about getting us into his household. And maybe that is something we need to unpack a number of times before it kind of shift in. But being in somebody's household has a number of assumptions and a number of things that we don't actually even mention. If I live in my dad's house and I'm a kid, being in his house represents a number of things. It represents his authority. It represents his rules. It represents the way he looks after the family, provides for us, make sure that the doors are locked at night, whatever, however we unpack that concept. But God tells us that he's very big into that. So the question might be, what does that mean to be in God's household? That is maybe the question that we need to relevantly unpack. Yes, where we gather and what is the house of God for us or physically is one conversation, but I don't think that's the point. The metaphysical, what is behind it, is I think what David is trying to point out. I don't think David is obsessed with the fact that it's a tent. I don't think that's the point. I think David is obsessed with the fact that God says that's where he dwells. So for David saying, better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your tent, does not mean, oh, it's so amazing being between four flap tent walls. I don't think that's what he's trying to say. He says, but you dwell here, you are here, and that's why this is more amazing than anything. If that's any form of response, but I think
that's great. Thank you. I'm going to ask you a million questions. It's how I process. So if I find something
that's brilliant. And by the way, Jono, if you're new on this whole Hebraic thinking thing, it takes a while to snap out of the philosophical approach to the text. It really takes a while, even if you're confronted with it like a lot. Our default is always to read another layer, another meaning, without asking what does it really mean at the bedrock. So it's perfect. So it takes a while, and I'm very glad that you're enjoying it.
No, it's lovely. I love God's word, so it's amazing. And
Amen.
I'm trying to, just always trying to make the connection to make it relevant to my journey. I think that's what it's about,
Yeah, for
what
sure.
it means for me today, and is there anything that I can take to apply to my heart and to my lifestyle to actually journey in something deeper than what I've learned so far.
Jonah, Jonah, can
I said Andy had the same reaction that I did to Shabbat.
Say again, Andy had?
The same reaction that I had to my first Shabbat.
Did Jonathan have that?
Yes.
Oh.
Then I realized it's essentially just communion. It's breaking bread and remembering Jesus and being thankful in what he's done. So it's breaking bread. So I'm happy. I love it.
Good. You made a very important point, and I'm going to answer it just for the sake of everybody. We are being trained when we read Bibles, what does it say to me? And I'm just going to be fundamentally challenging that now. This is not the way we should read the Bible. The first layer that you try to hear when the Bible speaks, the first layer is try to hear what the original audience might have heard. Because it wasn't written for me and you. The Bible was written in a culture by somebody from a very specific cultural designation. So the first question is always, what is the Bible saying? The original author to the original audience. Second thing, what I believe, and it may be the other way around, but second thing is I believe we should ask, what is the text telling me about Christ? And the third thing I think is, how can what I'm learning from those two be made relevant in my life? But if I start with how it is relevant in my life, I become the objective. And then I'm hijacking the original author as if he's written to me. And that's not the truth. Does that make sense? I think there's three things, and we should definitely ask the third one, not second or first, because then you're going to end up on philosophical Christianity, which a lot of people are on. That's my 5 cents of the little bit of experience that I had in dealing with how people try to hear the text for themselves. The Bible isn't speaking to you. It's not speaking to me. It is speaking to us after we understand that it's speaking to an original audience, and it is the revelation of Christ. It is a written testimony for Jesus, which is pretty much what he said. He says, I've come to witness to the truth. I've come to just tell you that what's written about me, is embodied in me. So I'm reiterating myself now. That's very important on our journeys, but it's the third important question. Good. But I think that's important, by the way. Great, because that's important for all of us, and we need to remind ourselves that when I try to sometimes when I read the Bible, and then I stop myself and say, I don't want to hear what the Bible is saying to me. I want to hear what it's saying about Christ, because that shifts my focus away from me. And I find that when I have revelation on that level, then all my own petty little questions are answered in any case. It's not about what's my identity in Christ. It's about what is the identity of Christ. Because if I ask what's my identity in Christ, then I'm the objective. And then I'm always very much obsessed with me. And I think we got to stop now. It's 8:20. I said we'll do 1 hour. But thank you, Jono. This is a really amazing question. And I think this is for all of us. We need to remember that. Yanni, did you want to say something? Yes.
Okay. I go back to where you meet God. Where did God dwell? In the Old Testament, I think it was in the tabernacle, and that because there was where the cloud is over the tabernacle and that. Yeah. But I think in the New Testament that changes, because Jesus said He will send the Holy Spirit, and I think so. Every time we are not on our own, but there's so much more places we can actually hear God's word. I mean, ultimately, it was actually much more difficult to be able to hear it. So yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, brilliant. I think, and it's the same thing. What you're explaining in the New Testament, it is about God's breath living in us and empowering us as a collective to be witnesses, to be martyrs for Him. But it's still the same. It's the same essence that it's being in the household of God. Because now the household is not made of tent flaps and stones upon each other and auditoriums. The household is this. We're the household of God. And we're bound together not by being in a tent, but being the Spirit of God. The tent is just, if I may say that. Lekker. Anybody, any other suggestions, input? How's the Brits doing?
Like you almost need to have another hour or two to let this sink in, because you're having to rewire your brain and see it from different lenses.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
That's the thing. It's taking off the lens. So
and also, Helmut, what you say, what really comes through very clearly is context as well. You know, the context of the right time of the writings of the books, and
absolutely.
Yeah, just what, I mean, honestly, I just want to salute you. I really do. I genuinely want to thank you for bringing this teaching, because I don't know what you all think, but it's completely revolutionary and revelatory for me to hear the Hebraic understanding. It completely unpacks it in a very, very different way that is more significant, holds more weight. And as you said, I mean, even that thing about the glue of the covenant, that's just so beautiful. And being married to Abba is just, wow. If you're single, stay single. Just stay married to Abba. That's the best advice I can give you from London tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. Praise the Lord. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I fully agree. Helmut, can you just quickly re-explain the Rav Chesed, the Emet part is M is mother and is composed of strong and water, which is the glue. And then what is the et part?
No, remember, it's just tough because the et is just a vowel point.
Oh, okay.
Hebrew is a consonant-only language, so it consists of 3 consonants: an aleph, a mem, and a tate. Aleph, mem, and a taf. So the the understanding of truth is that it's the glue of the covenant. It's it's almost the mother of the covenant. There's more ways of reading that, but that's almost the obvious reading which you find from an ancient Hebraic understanding. Truth, like remember, for us, truth is the opposite of a lie. Okay, and it's absolutely right, and it is absolutely the truth. Excuse the pun, but truth in ancient Hebrew, while that is not excluded, what I'm just saying, it had the other meaning of they understood that covenant language is everything in Hebrew. It is all about who chose us and who committed to us to bring us to a place where, so the Hebrews lived with an expectation of outcome and an expectation of a promise being fulfilled from a covenant point of view that literally makes no sense to us. The only covenant idea that we have in our lives is marriage. You know, and we have some contractual understandings of matters, but even that, it's not covenant. Covenant is embodied relationally, and that's why marriage is actually our only what's a raakpunt? You know what I mean? Our only touch point on covenant. So emet is relational covenant language. That's why Pontius Pilate just didn't get it. You know, he wanted to debate, what's your truth? Or you want to hear my truth? You know, whatever. Like he was debating how he looked at, he wanted the last banter about how he looks at the world. And, you know, and Jesus goes like, silence is your answer, buddy. You can lie awake about what's the truth tonight. But he didn't understand that Jesus was actually saying to him, the fact that you just called me the king of the Jews is the glue of the covenant. Boom. And I think that is a very important and a very beautiful layer. By the way, I just want to say the last 24 hours of Jesus' life in the scriptures, especially from the book of John, is just filled with Hebraic nuances. It is fabulous. We should well, we've done that a number of times, but when the right time comes again, we should focus on those. But thank you. Okay, guys, let's rock and roll. It's 8:30. Are you all doing safe in lockdown? Whatever that means. Allemaal goed?
I think we all might become nomadic after the lockdown.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately. Or fortunately.
Yeah.
Start living in tents.
Yeah. Yeah. To everyone, and thank you for your support, and thank you for being here. And yeah, I want to say, what do you want to talk about next? But maybe what I do want to say, if there are scriptures and concepts in the Bible that you want to do, but I realize that if I'm going to indulge into themes, I'm going to start giving my opinion, and that's not what I'm called to do. Like my opinion is irrelevant, as is most of our opinions, you know. But if there are scriptures that you're dealing with, you say, what is written there? You know, please send it on, and I'll ask God if there's something specific that I think I need to share next time. But if there's scriptures and there's some scriptural content that needs unpacking, then let's have a look at it.
I feel your opinion should only be shared with a glass of wine when in resistance. The rest should end.
That's fair.
It is worth doing the effort to get where you are to have your opinion shared. But it's a good platform for truth, emet, to be shared.
Amen. Thank you. Yeah. No, I mean, some opinions are valid, but you know, I'm more joking when I say about opinions. I just think the world is filled with people's opinions. I mean, almost every strong charismatic leader in the world are where they are because they have a strong opinion, you know, and most people don't have strong opinions, and they follow people with strong opinions. And I want to almost say, maybe we should just try not to follow opinions, but try to follow the truth, follow the glue of the covenant, follow Yeshua. So we need to study Yeshua, and we need to understand how the text is unpacking him or witness to him. Okay, love you all. Stay safe. Bye, Deb and everyone. Stefan, Kate, Andries, Brendan, Danny, Brian Church, Siggy, Imogen. Jy het nie 'n storie vertel nie. Wat wil jy nou vertel?
Ja. Ali, ek voel jy moet op hier aanlyn bly vir ons.
Okay. Maar almal
Jy kon nog volgesels kan ek bly.
Yeah, everybody, but everybody got to say, right? We got to call the meeting to an end and then maybe do another one. Ziggy, call me in 5 minutes. Goodbye.
Oh, Ellie.
Come on.
I can just, ek sal almal anders uit die groep uithaal.
Ja.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye, everyone. Act 5 minutes.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Fine.
Nee.
Dis die, hoe bly sy? Hy was vast. Hoekom is sy gesig nog heel te loop?
Dan
Jy het hom gepost door.
Ek het dit nodig.
Ek het alleen 'n screenshot.
Ja. Dit kan soms maar.
Dis bekommerd oor jy mooi.
Ek is bekommerd oor my.
Jy raak nie obsessed en net go there, okay.
Ek speel dit.
Ja, ek weet maar jou boodskap is.
Dames, twee disclaimers.
Wat?
Die ene is die brein is op.
Oh, wow.
It wouldn't shock me. Ja?
Nog 'n disclaimer. Jy het nie gewone chat gevolg, so dis jy tiener chat.
O, ek dink lekker.
Okay.
Dit brand nie, maar ek het nie daaraan gedink nie, dit is 'n bietjie van 'n byt.
O, dis lekker.
Ja, maar ek sê maar net, dat jy dit weet.
Ons hou van 'n byt.
Hoe het dit gebeur?
Maar nie.
Dit is pretty good.
Ek kan nie wat's op.
Kom maar weer. Ja,
Obsessed. Dit is nie.
Dit is goed.
Maar ek is net so. Dan gaan nie bly nie. Okay. Ek is baie lief vir jou, maar dis jou
Weakness.
Weakness.
My weakness. Ek weet.
Ek het onmiddellik gerecognize as ek soos God eerste. En soos bijvoorbeeld, it wasn't about you, it was about.
Ek weet, jy het al 5 keer gesê.
Soos,
Ek het dit die eerste keer gehoor en ek het gesê ek jammer en ek het gesê ek verkeerd, so laat jy nog hoor.
wie zijn de participant?
Oepsie.